Good evening, everyone. This one will not be short, so strap yourselves in and let's go. Starting off with the ES. Last night, what I was saying was that we had finally lost that 41.88 after 3 days in a row of holding it Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and we got to that back test of the 41.60s. Now, ideally, the bull scenario was that we would reclaim this breakout around 41.63, 65 area, but instead, the overnight did not let that happen, and similarly, that happened on the Nasdaq. Uh, Instead, we sold down and rotated down to that number, that pivot 4137s, and to the other side of balance. You can think of this top of the green box to the bottom of this red box as one balance from that past couple weeks of trading. That kind of 70-ish, 60-ish point range, just a balance zone. We opened right at that 37-ish number, the RTH open, and slid down to the 16s, held this momentum trend line, and broke this downward one. So I'm actually going to get rid of that. The overnight at first looked like we'd be able to reclaim it. It was drifting nicely off from the previous day's low. However, we did just flush down to that 37.5 number. Interestingly, we did get that squeeze into the close, the unwind of deltas. We still closed on pretty heavy deltas, but that NVIDIA earnings release did cause a squeeze after hours. That's why you're seeing that weird ramp to the bottom of the green box around 41.55. That was quickly taken care of during Globex. That was pretty much instantly liquidated back down into the pivot zone, that kind of 32 to 37-ish area. Notably, the gap remains open for the RTH. This gap down scenario still remains open. This gap down, sorry, not scenario. This gap down just remains open, and it looks like on the Nasdaq we will probably be opening on a gap up. Before we get into the Nasdaq, how am I looking to trade ES? Well, I want to be long, and that is mostly predicated by the Nasdaq being where it is, and we'll get into that in a second. I still want to be short 41.58s. I think that's just a great short at this kind of close area. It was nice resistance during the Wednesday night overnight and right around our Globex opening area. I think it might be a stop run up here and then down lower. 65s, 64, 65. Just that's that our main number that we need to reclaim to start getting some sort of upward momentum. Above there, nothing changing. That VWAP close from the Tuesday RTH session, 88's that key number that has been there for a while. Pretty much the bottom of this auction where we broke down and where we salvaged the bid roughly on Monday and on Sunday's Globex Open. Above there, 94 is where I want to be sure the point of control of this auction. Above there, not interested in playing. Below, I want to be long 37s if the overnight mostly trades above today's RTH value area high. In other words, just shows some evidence of strength. And I want to be long 44s if we gap up and the overnight again spends a lot of time above that value area high. Below there, I want to be long 25s, just where we had our close, the RTH close roughly there, the point of control, the VWAP close, all that stuff is roughly there, kind of the top of this auction that we had for about whatever it was, like 5 hours or something. Below there, 21's little auction there, and then 17's just looks like that's been the key number. I had 16.5 coming into the day, but that's what I'm looking for. Below, not interested in getting long, quite honestly. I think that brings us to further liquidation. We'll be exiting this this main balance pretty much apart from the first week, pretty much the entire May lows. I think we can start liquidating into 40.98, where that gap has been open for, God, 3 weeks now, something like that. And below there, we start floating with 40.76 or something like that. And I think that'll become a serious liquidation scenario. I don't want to get involved. Moving on, let's get into the Nas crack. Here we go. And Nasdaq, because as you can see, what did we have? Well, we sold off pretty much the area I was talking about, which are these April-May swing highs from 2022. This is the number I was saying I wanted to see us hold. We came pretty close, within a couple dozen points or so, and we have ramped right back up, and that is also assisted with the NVIDIA earnings. We've also broken the downward trend line and right back up to the highs, pretty much equivalent to 41.94 on the ES. Similar story overall in that last night we were unable to reclaim this breakout bid, this afternoon breakout bid from Thursday. It was our resistance during overnight and sold off into roughly the area where I wanted to see bids. I'd said last night that we had 250 points of downward cushion until any real downward pressure. We caught the bid at 180 points down. Notably, that previous week's VWAP close was not key support today. It did not mark the low of the week, and I think that's evidence of that. We are weaker than this week than the past three. That's what I was looking for, and we got it. In terms of trading this, how am I looking at it? Well, we're going to have a huge gap by the looks of it. This is our day's high, and so far the overnight is trading 130 points above that. So I don't really want to get involved in between it, other than a few little trades here. So let's talk about it from the bottom up. If we get a move down to the day's lows, I want to be long after a run of that low a day. Above there, I want to be long at the point of control or the VWAP close if it's offering a quick bid. Above there, I want to be long 652 and 3/4. That being where we auctioned before that big Nvidia bid. 652 and 3/4. That also being the previous or today's RTH close and roughly last week's VWAP close. So I like that those two numbers correlated. That VWAP close was also resistance early in the morning, roughly resistance again, and then support around there. So I want to be long there. I want to be long after a tag of today's RTH high day. So after this gap closes, essentially we're going to have a gap up with a tiny gap still remaining from coming into today's session. So I want to be long after a tag this high. I want to be long 711 where we have that initial bid at 225-ish. Above there, I want to be short if we open below 800. I want to be short at 805 and quarter, that being our VWAP close from Tuesday, and that is before a tag of 765. 765 being that Thursday afternoon breakout bid that we had right over here, and which was roughly our overnight resistance from last night. Above there, I want to be long 822s. If we get a bid at 805 instead, rotate back up. I want to be long 822s, that being where we caught the bid originally on Tuesday, where we've had numerous bids during these weeks over here. And it also is our first standard deviation of weekly VWAP from last week. Above there, and I want to be, if we open above 890, so if we gap up, we gap way up above settlement highs, Tuesday's highs, I want to be long at 877 after a tag of this this 870-ish number. I want to be long 877s, and above there I want to be short 908s and not interested in anything above there. Now the final ticker. Oh Jesus, we're already 8 minutes into this thing. The final ticker, the Dow Jones. Let's get right into it. The Dow is pretty much doing exactly what I was looking for. This thing looked like a house of horrors to me, and it looked like we're going to come back to the breakout bid. The breakout bid to me was about 32,500. I had this number as a must hold, this zone, and as you can see, we did not must hold it. We we crapped out. That was the low of the month. We held it higher during that second week or whatever it was, that third week of May. We held it, and now we've lost it finally. We've lost the low of the month, and I think we're coming for that breakout bid. We're at this kind of 32,500 number. That's what I wrote last night, is that if we broke this low of the month, I think we'd come down. Now, there are some weekly points of controls and things along the way, so let's talk about that and how I'm looking to trade it. Well, important to note that today, much like I think yesterday and the day before that, these gap downs are moving right to the yesterday's low a day and then getting offered and slammed down and unable to breach kind of the halfback or the afternoon balance. This is a great example. Ran up to yesterday's low of the day, right over here, and then falls down and unable to really get back in this sort of upper balance here. Unable to reclaim it, just staying down low. So how am I looking to trade this? Once again, we had heavy deltas into the close. Sellers are defending today's VWAP close right at the Globex open and liquidating us down. Looks like we're heading our way down to that breakout bid around 500, so I'm going to keep that in mind, but I think we'll have some bids along the way and won't just be a linear sell-off. If we open within range, I want to be long 811s, just being a little bit above the low of the day. If we do not, if we gap down, I want to be short previous day's low. Below there, I want to be long 662s. That is a weekly point of control that helped us really get a few gaps going on the way up when this originally happened. Below there, 545, want to be long as well, that being a point of control. And then below there, I want to be long 489s after a small gap close. Is this even loading? Not sure if it is. Might be too far back that it's not even loading. Not sure. I'll have to look at that later. Anyway, I want to be long 545s, 489s after the gap close, and then 416s finally is the last place I want to be long, another weekly point of control. That's what I'm looking for on the Dow. So essentially I want to be long until roughly this breakout bid that we had back in the end of March. This correlating to something like 40, 50-ish on the SPOOs. Yo, no, 39.85. That's roughly the equivalent that we're looking at on the S&P. Above that previous day's low, today's RTH low, I want to be short 997s. That is just our, that is roughly the low of the month, give or take. That was roughly the earlier low of the month at 997. I think it's actually a little bit higher. I think it's at 3,000, 30,004. And then above there, I want to be short 112s, that being the 95% weekly value low from last week. That's all I got. That was a beautiful 11.5-minute video. As fast as I can do it. Hope that makes sense. Hope it wasn't as scrambled as it felt. It's 10:30. I'm going to bed. These plans will be updated tomorrow pre-market per usual. Have a great night and trade safe.